Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a special guest. Our special guest, very smart guy, great writer. He's super accomplished. It's Ian Gurvitz. He's a native New Yorker who has lived in Los Angeles for the last 30 years, working in television as a writer, director, and executive producer. He's produced over 300 episodes of television on shows such as Wings, Becker, The Wonder Years, Get a Life, Frasier. Those are all great shows. Along with creating 3 shows that went to it's a series. So he's also, in addition to working in television, he's written 4 books. This guy's busy. He's written Hello, Lied the Agent. I read that book. Deconstructing God, A Heretic's Case for Religion. Sounds super interesting. Welcome to Dumbfuckistan. I love that title. That was in 2016, The Dumbed Down, Disinformed, Dysfunctional, Disunited States of America. And his latest book, which we're going to talk about today, is Freakout, the 2016 Election and the Dawn of the American Democalypse. It's Ian Gurvitz. Hi, Ian. Thanks for coming.
Doing? Thanks. My pleasure.
Thanks for... So tell me about Freakout, the 2016 election. Now, I've read some of the book. It's fantastic. You're obviously a gifted writer.
Well, thank you.
Tell us
it's pure panic what you see on the page. So the title is literal. I freaked out election night and started screaming and spent 7 months screaming at my laptop, and that's the result.
Okay. Now, what do you think? Why do you think Trump happened? Let's start there.
Oh, man, how far back do you go? I take it back to like 2010, 2011 when he was on the road with that birther nonsense. Mm-hmm. Part of the cause, I think, was networks giving him a platform and TV, cable outlets sitting him down and engaging him in Q&A. Why do you think this is the case? And people on the left, even after Obama gave his, released the birth certificate, he gave him a birth certificate. What more do they want? And they didn't see that he didn't want anything. He just wanted to keep saying it. That was the point. It was a shout out to people on the right. Like he said at that, Klan rally they had in Cleveland before the election, I am your voice. He was their voice, and he was saying, I'm here, and I'm your champion. I'm going to re-empower you. So when people would complain that he's already shown the birth certificate, they didn't get what this guy was doing. There was this thing there in the election, don't take him literally, take him seriously. I would say don't take him literally necessarily, take him seriously, but more than that, take him tactically. Everything he says, after the birth certificate came out, he said, well, I don't know. I've got people, top people telling me maybe it's a forgery. He just wanted to keep saying it, But again, I saw him, I think it was on CBS. I saw him on other cable outlets engaging in a Q&A with reporters. I've got people on the ground studying it. What they're finding is unbelievable. What they find. This guy's about winning the moment. And what I'm afraid of is that I still don't think people see that. Not enough people, not people who can fight this guy.
Well, I certainly, it's apparent Trump has been manipulating the media his entire professional career, and he learned how to do it really early on. He learned that you tell some outrageous lie, everybody makes a huff about it, and then as soon as it starts to go bad for you, you just tell another one bigger and more outrageous, and then he watches the press run at it, as someone called it, dogs buck the lick up their own vomit,
Yes.
And because he is what they produced. They did produce Donald Trump. Even as they were firing Paula Deen, they still kept him on as a national television show on NBC when he was running around the country as a racist trying to get the president to show his birth certificate, which he'd already shown. Don't you think that the media is culpable?
I think they're really culpable. I mean, and if you go back to the next stage of this, go to the 2011 Correspondents' Dinner. When Obama and Seth Meyers just took him apart and he was publicly humiliated. I think everything that's happening now, as far as his intention, he's out for revenge. He wants to wipe out every single thing that Obama did because he wants to be legitimized. He was made a fool of. But if you go after that and he started these rallies, not one of those other, 16 other candidates? First of all, they weren't staging rallies. They couldn't fill,
Right.
They couldn't fill an Elks Lodge,
right?
Let alone an auditorium. But cable channels covered it wall to wall. This was the OJ trial. This was the OJ chase. They couldn't not show it because if they did, then people would watch it somewhere else. They legitimized the shit that this guy was saying. It should have been self-evident at that point that this is an indecent human being saying indecent things and degrading, as if you could degrade the political process any further, but he managed it. But by putting him on for an hour straight, they turned it into an infomercial. And they in effect said to people who may have thought, I think what he's saying may be a bit racist. No, it's okay. Why? He's on TV. You know?
Yes, well, a lot of people would call that the normalization of Donald Trump.
Yeah, they
so
normalize.
When you welcome him on and say, thanks for coming on, sir, thanks, Mr. Trump, and thanks for coming back, and I hope you come back sometime,
Sure.
and you treat him like you treat everyone else, it is normalizing that kind of gross behavior.
Yeah, and the next step of that to me, and this is what I wrote, was when they would put the, people I called the Trump-splainers on the air. You know, Boris Epstein, who's now involved in his own little business, or Katrina Pearson, or Kellyanne Conway, who, after the liberation of Washington, I think she's going to have her head shaved and she's going to have to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue with a sign reading "Collaborator." But what they did was they let them on their shows and they just did Q&A. And the host said this and the other guest said this and she said that. And if those people could battle them to a draw, they won.
So what's your feelings? So now you've executive produced television shows, so
Yeah.
you're a big shot in Hollywood.
No, not at all.
That's how I would.
A survivor.
A survivor. Okay.
Trying to survive.
So you've a lot of huge accomplishments in Hollywood for you over the last 30 years, and Jeff Zucker hires not only Corey Lewandowski, pays him $500,000 to come spew pure propaganda, and he calls it news. Not only that, but he goes one step further and then hires Jeffrey Lord, someone who Anderson Cooper literally said Trump could take a dump on your desk and you defend it.
Exactly.
But that was engineered by Jeff Zucker, the head of CNN.
Yeah.
So,
money, ratings. As far as I'm concerned, they just turned that portion of CNN into the Roman Coliseum. So my attitude was, if you're going to do that, just throw a lion into the mix.
Why don't you?
Let's really make it entertaining.
I agree. So why do you think more people don't hold places like CNN accountable for what happened?
They've got a partial, part of what they do is legitimate or seems legitimate, but I never really watched it in the first place. But I turned a deaf ear to it because if you're going to put those people on the air, then you're not serious. What's happening is not news. It's not journalism.
That's not news.
It's sensationalism. Now, after the election, there's this thing that they have at Harvard I think it's for political consultants, and they get them all together and they sort of have a little recap, what happened, who did what. And at the time, they had Zucker saying, we probably shouldn't have aired the Trump rallies.
Right.
We probably did it a little too much. We shouldn't have done it as much. And my reaction was, no, motherfucker, you shouldn't have done it at all.
Yes.
That to me was, if not the original sin, was the next one. They legitimized this guy who should never have been legitimized. If there were news outlets, should have just outed him as a thug, a moron, a racist, and said he's not a legitimate candidate. He doesn't belong in the White House. But for fear of seeming partisan, they couldn't do that. So they had to make it. He said, she said. To me, that was dangerous.
So I don't know if you've heard, we played it on the show, but Les Moonves was caught on an open microphone at a meeting in New York City in a fancy hotel, and he was caught saying on an open microphone that Trump is bad for America, but he's good for CBS. So keep going, baby.
Yeah, I put that in my book, and it's not surprising. It's ratings.
But it seems like it's good to see that you mentioned that in your book, and we mention it here. It just seems like the establishment media got such a pass for making Trump what he is. In fact, even the Hillary Clinton campaign, to a certain extent, in the WikiLeaks revealed that they had that Pied Piper theory, right? Which they wanted to elevate Trump, the most repugnant of the Republicans. They wanted to elevate him to run against, and then their helpers in the media actually did that. So, again, it's weird that not enough people, I don't think, point their finger in the right direction, and the people who really did create Trump get such a huge pass.
Yeah, they got a pass, but we're in the moment now. Now it's the present. The thing is, you need to look at the past in order to learn from it. Now, I think it's either tonight or tomorrow. Trump's staging one of his little masturbatory rallies.
I think it's tonight.
Phoenix.
It may be.
Is he going back there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Will they cover it wall to wall? Because
yes.
There you go. Then
yes.
Because
they did nothing.
They did one after the election when he went down south. Wall-to-wall coverage, because I was wrapping up my book and I was thinking, how am I going to, what's the end? Because there is no end to this. It's just the beginning. Hopefully it's not the beginning of the end. But, my question at that time was, he's staging another rally. How are they going to cover it? Sure enough, wall-to-wall. an hour of free airtime with his own supporters in his own place, making him look good. Nobody contradicts him, which is what he needs. You know, that psycho press conference the other day about Charlottesville, where he went off. You know, I watched this. You've got people asking him legitimate questions, but all they're going to get is illegitimate answers. Now, they may get a nice media moment where he does that, well, alt-right, then what about the alt-left, where he just, you know, nobody called. He guy pulls this out of his ass in the moment, and nobody stops. But what they should do, you can't engage him in normal conversation. What I wish people in the media would do, and this goes back to Jim Acosta when he was battling during a press conference, or that guy, what's his name, Brian Karam from Nevada. I wish they would just, you know, they tried to take him on, but it turns into a little battle, which turns into more of a media show, which gives everybody something to talk about. What I wish they would do, in the name of decency, get up, say, go fuck yourself. We won't participate in this farce. Goodbye. Turn around and leave. You need to fight this guy the way he fights. And if you engage in Q&A with him, you lose. You know, he can say fake media. He can continue to say this all day long. But nobody's saying, no, fake president. Goodbye. We're out of here. When you want to get serious, we'll talk.
So I'll go one more point on that.
I'm upset if you can.
I'm upset with the press also in the sense that they were told to turn off their cameras for a while. Remember that?
They were locked out.
And they turned them off. And so my advice to them was turn on your cameras.
Turn on your phones, turn on your
cameras.
Yeah.
And have them arrest you or something.
Yeah. What's he gonna do?
For doing journalism in America. Let's have so be a little courageous. And they all turned them off.
Yeah. Access.
It's all about access, baby.
It was about access before. Nobody wanted to lose it. And
yes.
if you work for these companies, you know, you can't sacrifice that because they still want to be in the game. So, unfortunately, this is the result. You know, the result is that you've got a guy calling out the entire press corps as fake news, and they take it. That's what I don't understand. And again, I'm reacting as somebody home on watching my TV, screaming, "Don't take it!" It's like the end of Rocky. You just want to go, you know, get up, fight.
So here we are. It's Freakout Nation. That's the book, written by Ian Gurvitz, and I think there's a lot. So we talked about the media's responsibility in creating Trump. It's funny, you know. Now I'm blanking on his name. Mort Saul.
Yes.
Told one of the producers who worked for this show, that if Bernie runs, this is before he ran, he says if Bernie runs, it's not going to be the right wing that's going to be his problem. It's going to be the Democrats and the left wing media. And God damn it, he was right. They could not stop trashing him. And that's what I think led to a lot of people just to be able to see through the media, right? Which is what helped the Young Turks, which is a network I work with. So they came to people who liked Bernie and wanted a revolution, saw the unfair slanted coverage, even in quote unquote lefty media. But I have to remind people that MSNBC isn't lefty the way Fox is right. MSNBC is a corporate entity that just happens to be able to make money off lefties sometimes. They fired Phil Downey for being against the Iraq War. They fired Ed Schultz for being against the TPP. And as soon as Rachel Maddow says one thing that costs them a penny, she will also be fired, which is why she doesn't. So, would you agree that that people who kind of undercut Bernie had maybe something to do with Trump?
To me, primaries are for beating the hell out of each other. That's what they are.
I agree.
Look, philosophically, I am on the same page with Bernie Sanders in terms of how life should be. Mm-hmm. My concern right now is tactical. Now if you look backwards as what happened, in a two-person race, there's nothing worse than finishing second. So she lost. Would he have won? I honestly don't know. At the time, watching this every single minute of every single day, what I was feeling was you don't send a unicorn to battle a dragon. I was afraid that it wasn't going to happen, that maybe he wouldn't have been able to win. That said, I also look back, and I think Democrats blew it at some very key moments. Now, again, if she had won, life on earth is perfect? No, not at all. But it stops a lot of horrible things from happening. That was my feeling. What I would have liked to have seen at the convention, two of them walking out hand in hand, candidate and running mate, candidate and co-candidate. That's what I would have preferred. It would have galvanized the base. Whether it involved compromises, very possible. But to my thinking was, we're fighting the Nazis here. So
I agree with you. It was shocking to me to see that instead of she knew that they had a problem. The Clinton campaign knew they had a problem with their base, right? Meaning their progressives,
exactly,
right? And instead of reaching out to them, she went the other way. She got Tim Kaine, who was farther to the right than she was. They didn't get Elizabeth Warren. They didn't get Bernie Sanders. No. She went the exact opposite, which was just like, we don't need you. And in fact, let me play this. This is Chuck Schumer. This is their idea on how they were going to win that election, because they turned their back on blue collar people. They turned their back on workers, because we know in the 90s the Democrats became Republicans. It's a longer story, but here's Chuck Schumer. Here it is, the manifestation of that. Here we go.
This is the second point, for every blue-collar Democrat we will lose in Western PA, we will pick up 2, 3 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And you can repeat that in Ohio and Illinois and Wisconsin.
So literally the Democrats were campaigning not towards progressives, not towards workers, not towards blue-collar people, but towards Republicans. And so people wonder how we got Trump, and I'm like, well, there it is, baby.
That's part of it. I mean, what I wrote in my previous book, and this was 6 months before the election when we didn't even know if it was Trump or Cruz, but it was fairly clear that it was going to be Hillary. I thought Sherrod Brown as VP.
That would have helped.
Not only, a lot of Democrats get out and they roll up the collars and they do that thing where they pretend to be, working class. This guy doesn't have to fake it. This guy is that. He can talk to people. He's from Ohio. He can talk to people, not just in geographical Ohio, but in psychological Ohio, with the 3 states where it was lost.
Yeah.
That, to me, I think that was a mistake. Tim Kaine, lovely guy, smart guy, experienced, intelligent, heart may be in the right place. Tactically, I don't know what you get out of it, and I don't know what you got out of it. I think it was an error, but frankly, at the time, they were looking at, can we take Arizona? Can we take Georgia? Eye on the prize.
God,
took their eye off it. So I think, again, campaign made mistakes. Not a perfect candidate by any stretch. Obviously, they've all got their baggage. But I think they made some mistakes along the way.
Does it scare you that it doesn't seem, it's in fact, the Democratic Party the DNC at least has shifted even further right after losing. In fact, they got rid of, Obama had a rule, no corporate PAC money at the DNC. They got rid of that as soon as they could. As soon as Obama was gone, they got rid of that. So Hillary moved to the right with her vice president choice. The DNC moved to the right. It's like nothing is going to wake them up. Thomas Frank, who I've had on this show, who wrote What's the Matter with Kansas and Listen Liberal, he says they're a party that's incapable of change.
I hope they can change. Right now it just seems like it's political calculation for 2018 and 2020. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like they're fighting the micro battle when they have to fight the macro battle. You look at money in politics, you say that's a cardinal sin. But with Trump, that wasn't the factor. It wasn't. She outspent him. Her ads were slick. Her ads were professional. They were all very high-minded, which to me was another problem because this guy was in a street fight and they were in a debating society. Trump's ads were and still are, if you look at them. This is like no money down real estate shit with the fast voiceover at the end. Conditions may apply. I mean, this is juvenile. It wasn't about money. It was about free media access that this guy got, and they legitimized somebody illegitimate, and he ran with it. So whether that's going to be the case in 2018 or 2020, I don't know. I hope they do.
Yeah.
To me, this is going to take a coalition of similar-minded people to get together with. I mean, it's triage. This guy's a cancer on this country. First, you cut out the tumor, then you worry about healing. What the root is to that, I'm not sure. I try to look. It's a matter of who. It's a matter of what. It's a matter of how it's presented. And my fear with Democrats is, A, they don't know how to fight because they don't know it's a fight, and they don't know how to sell.
So Cenk Uygur makes the point. He's the host of the Young Turks. He makes the point when we say things like that, like, oh, the Democrats are weak. They don't know how to fight. He says it's because they're chosen to be weak. They're chosen to not know how to fight, which is true. If you look at who's the leader of the party, like Chuck Schumer, now we both know he's not a leader in any sense of the word. What makes him the leader, why he gets voted in as leader, is because he gets the most money from Wall Street, and then he spreads it around to his friends, and then they vote for him. So that's what happened to the Democratic Party, is when they got in bed with Wall Street, you cannot be in bed with Wall Street and then be and work stand up for workers, because Wall Street's agenda is diametrically opposed to workers' agenda. So that's where we're left with. Both political parties got in bed with management. And so people want to, just like, you wrote in your book about how Michael Moore talked about on Bill Maher, how they wanted to smash the establishment, right? So that's really what voters wanted to do. This was an anti-establishment election, and they ran the most establishment, in fact, with all her baggage of NAFTA, and that's why don't you think it was crazy? Do you agree with me that all during the crucial months of the election, when it was starting to become clear that she was going to lose Michigan and she was having trouble there, Barack Obama was still pushing the TPP at the top. It was going to die anyway, and everyone knew it was going to die, but he still pushed it till the day he left office. Wasn't that weird?
I think what they should have done was even more basic than that. I don't think those voters could spell TPP. I don't think they knew what the hell was going on. What he had to do was go there and say who saved the auto industry and who wanted to let it die. I think they had to go back to basics. And yeah, it's true. There's corporate money on both sides. You can't run away with it. You can't run away from it. You see politicians talking and they say we have to spend half our time fundraising. Nice waste of money on the taxpayer dollar, getting more money. But how do you get money out of politics? How do you get Citizens United changed? We're already one foot in the hole with who got placed on the Supreme Court. That's not going anywhere. Now, my fear is Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Kennedy, if they get a sneeze, we're screwed.
So we've had conservative courts. We are definitely in a tight spot with those conservative courts. So my fear is this, right, that I always say this. I say Trump is a big problem, but he is a symptom of a bigger problem. And that bigger problem is neoliberalism that was started by Ronald Reagan and picked up by Al Gore and Bill Clinton. If you think about it, Bill Clinton did lots of things that Republicans could only dream of, like when he passed NAFTA. George Herbert Walker could not get it passed. He got it passed. But at the same time he passed NAFTA, which cut the legs out from underneath the unions, he then exploded the prison population while gutting welfare, and then repealed the New Deal banking regulations, which then collapsed the economy within 10 years. And at the same time, did you know he had a secret deal to privatize Social Security with Newt Gingrich, but Monica Lewinsky scandal the next day saved it. So my point is that's why Howard Dean, when he was running in 2003, would start his speeches by saying, I'm from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. Let's get back to being Democrats. And that's why Bernie starts off by saying, it sounds like you're ready for a revolution. Those are the same opening lines as far as I'm concerned. Let's get back to what we were supposed to be as a party. And until the Democrats do that, which I don't think they're able to, I think we're going to be stuck because Trump was coming. In fact, a lot of people predicted a Trump-like character this time was going to not win, but win next time. A lot of people were saying that, but he won this time, which I think that they dodged a bullet that he won this time because he's such an incompetent. What if it was someone like Ted Cruz who could get shit done?
Well, that's my fear right now. Is if I look at Trump and emotionally I want him. I want him out of my White House. This guy's a disgrace. But if he goes. And again, the whole Russia investigation, which I'm fine, throw marbles under his feet, catch him at anything, I don't care. But if he goes, what's the next step? President Pence, a guy who's a little bit more adept and there's no drama, and he gets that done.
And he's just as evil.
Suppose they take this guy down. As far as I'm concerned, Pence is like a vertical loaf of Wonder Bread with a balloon on top. This guy's a joke. But if he goes down, who's next? President Paul Ryan. We're already screwed. So I don't know how you plot for the future. To me, it's a matter of the message. It's a matter of the messenger. It's not just getting rid of Trump and Trumpism, but who's going to do that? Who's going to carry the message? What faces? And it's never too early to start. Right now, I see a lot of people jockeying for position on both sides. What's happening tonight? Paul Ryan town hall covered on CNN. Why? Why are they covering a Paul Ryan town hall?
You tell me why.
Because probably he's going to primary him.
Oh, yeah?
Maybe. I don't know. What's the show here? Jeff Flake writes a book. Perhaps they shouldn't have done birtherism. That was wrong. My thing is, your sense of moral outrage is on a 5-year time delay.
Yes.
What do people do when they're going to run for office? They write that book. America for an Americans and Patriots for a patriotic patriotism. Whatever bullshit title they put to it, they write that book. That's always the first step in running for president. So I'm looking ahead going, I don't know what this landscape is going to be in the next few years. I just know, look, my wish list is Democrats and progressives from every end of that spectrum, figure out, because this is triage, figure it out.
Okay.
Then there are new fights to have afterwards. But if this guy, and I would put nothing past Trump right now, because everything that would traditionally have damaged a candidate and just taken them right out of the race, it didn't work.
So people, I'll also say this, that the people who, it bothers me that now I saw the ethics lawyer for George W. Bush wagging his finger at the Trump administration. It makes me sick to my stomach to see how Trump and the Democrats have the ability to allow Trump to rehabilitate war criminals. It's just disgusting to me.
Yes,
and they should be in prison. If Barack Obama did his job, he should have put those guys in prison for torture and war crimes, but he didn't.
Well, look, Cheney's on his 5th heart right now.
Yes, right.
What does that tell you?
So people who act like it's a surprise that Trump happened, it's like 30 years of the Southern 40 years of the Southern strategy. Two of the last 4 RNC chairmen apologized for the Southern strategy. So they've been using subtle racism the whole time. Now all of a sudden we're supposed to all act outraged by overt racism, right?
Yeah, well, you look, birtherism was nothing more than the Southern strategy. That's all he was doing.
Yes.
The fact is, what gave us this guy to me is that we elected a black president, then we reelected a black president, and then we didn't impeach the black president for the crime of being president while black. And these people were pissed off. People made the case that those rallies, people were upset about the economy. I didn't see one sign at those rallies that said we're really pissed off that economic growth is stalled out at less than 2% of GDP. I didn't see any of that. I saw a lot of anger. This guy was harnessing that, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and he still knows exactly what he was doing. His comments on Charlottesville were despicable. Mm-hmm. From a president. My God, this guy, you're not going to get him singing Amazing Grace in the church, and I'm glad that woman's mother told him to go fuck himself. I won't shake your hand. I won't participate in this. You caused this.
So now what the Democrats are supposed to do is stick the Republicans to Trump like glue.
Absolutely. They need to brand the party. That's something I wrote in this book. That's the first step in this. You don't let them surgically separate themselves from him. But they're in the process of doing that. But again, they're looking at the president and the future, and they're trying to see which way is the wind going to blow. I didn't see a lot of people upset when they were in Rose Garden after the House passed their version. The AHCA, whatever it was.
Yes.
I didn't see a lot of people upset. I saw Paul Ryan there. I saw the rest of them there. They were delighted, as exactly as they would have been if McCain went the other way. We were looking at like the Roman emperor at that point. Thumbs up, thumbs down. This was insane.
I know.
But to me, the ultimate irony of that moment is that it took a Republican with cancer to stop Republicans from taking away health care from other Republicans with cancer.
Yeah.
Which is part of the problem, is that Democrats don't make that point to their own side and to the other side. Folks, disease doesn't play favorites based on party loyalty, and neither do insurance companies. Disease is a human thing.
So I have this conversation with a lot of people who I agree with ideologically. So you and I agree. It's tactically is where we divert, because I think that we got Trump because of the failures of the Democratic Party. The Republicans have always been racist, right? They've just, like we said, they had the Southern strategy for 40 years since Nixon. They've been, and everyone knows. But right now they're trying to suppress the vote of black people all across the country.
Well, to me, again, what was that? Again, go back to right after the election, right? His mysterious 3 to 5 million voters.
Yes.
All the dead voters who, for some bizarre reason, all voted Democratic, which is not for the health care because they're dead. So where's that come from? It comes from an attitude and a goal of setting the table for what he's calling his voter fraud commission. And the only commission is the only fraud is the commission itself.
Right. That's a voter suppression commission.
Exactly, and that's all it's ever been. This whole thing of voter suppression is nonsense.
Right. That's cross-check, right? That's what that Kobach and
Chris Kobach.
And
yes.
Craig Pallas has done some great reporting on that to reveal that for what it is.
But again, if you say voter fraud enough times to a dumb public, you'll embed that idea in their heads as something that's legitimate.
Like WMDs. Right?
That's all
Just
it
say
takes.
it over and
Just
over.
say it over and over.
Right.
And you can get a country to go to war. Now, the other part of that equation back then, because obviously you had your Democrats who voted for that war. You know, why? Because people were pissed off of 9/11, and frankly, they would have dropped a bomb on Canada if it gave us, you know, the catharsis that we wanted. Just like when he bombed Syria after that chemical attack, you know, people liked it. Why? Because it was cathartic. Did it do anything? No, but, you know, to call him presidential at that point was repulsive. But, you know, getting back to tactics, I'm not sure what the right tactics are. Again, to me, it's a matter, you know, we probably agree that it's time you've got to brand that party. They gave rise to Trump. They caused him to happen. To me, they caused him to happen with 8 years of Obama obstruction by delegitimizing him, by turning, you know, by flirting with birtherism. Then I don't remember one Republican who came out at the time and said this is repulsive and it's racist and it's got to stop. They got their way. The closest
it came was during the campaign when John McCain told that woman that was as close as they came.
I agree, and that was a lovely moment. But the sin had already been committed.
It had already been
because
and he put Sarah Palin on.
That woman
already
happened.
Internalized it.
It happened. She was just the manifestation of what they put in the zeitgeist. So yes, he had a noble moment. He's had a few over time. But it was because of what they did that caused that woman to occur, and that sentiment to occur. What did she say? I can't vote for him.
He's an Arab.
He's an Arab. The sheer stupidity among these people. But again, getting back to tactics, which way do you go now? Right? You're on either side of the Democratic Party, and I don't like that term Democrat because that was a little Republican talking point they came up with. They called it the Democrat Party. And for 8 years, every Republican did that same talking point. Why? It sounds harsh. Ends with rat.
Right.
You know, so that was just another little sly little game that they were playing. 8 years of obstruction. They set the table for this guy. So you can call it Republican behavior or Democratic mistakes. Probably a combination of both. You know,
definitely.
The question is, where do you go from here?
Where do we go from here?
I have no idea. I don't know. It changes daily. But again, it's a matter of what's the message. Like we said, you need to brand Republicans. You need to stick Trump to them and never let them get away from it. From local races, you know, now I guess there's a chance of taking back the House in 2018. Senate doesn't look like it, you know, so forget that. So even if you got to impeachment with the 2018 House, just as a political tactic, because you know they would have done it. You know, Jason Chaffetz already said he had 2 years worth of investigations saved up.
Right.
You know, little squirrel-faced, like, you know, like nuts in a tree. He was storing them up in case she won. So we'd be in a different world right now. But what do you do at this point to get rid of this guy? You know, first you stain the party with him. Then it becomes a matter of what's your message, which if you saw that, it was a few weeks ago, Democrats came out, I think, on the Capitol steps. They had their shirt sleeves rolled up, and it was
better deal.
Oh, my God. I freaked out because, look at what Trump did. Ran around the country screaming, "Make America Great Again." You know, now where he got his slogans from, you know, one of the books I started reading after the election was The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. The parallels are frightening. You know, he learned a lot of lessons from that. But he ran around huge rallies, big symbols, right? Big themes. What do they come out saying? It's going to be what? You're going to make the country great? Well, you know, it'll be better. You go, holy shit, if this is all a fight you people have in you, we are screwed.
I will say this, that when people voted for Barack Obama in 2008, they were voting for change. And they didn't get it. And when they voted in he made the banks bigger. He took 2 wars, made them into 7. He made the Bush tax cuts permanent. He proposed the grand bargain, which was cutting Social Security. And he did bail out Wall Street on the backs of homeowners. There was no jobs program. There was no program to help people. In fact, they baked in 10 million foreclosures into his banking program. So my point is, and then by the way, Occupy Wall Street happened. He let them crack their heads across the coast. And then when they took the union away from the teachers in Wisconsin, he wouldn't put the soft shoe on and go march with them. He wouldn't even mention it. So to me, that's what happens. The Republicans have been putting this in place for Trump to happen, but so have the Democrats. And if the Democrats can't shake off their donors, which they can't, we're going to be stuck. We might take back the House, but again, it's going to be a bullshit government. We got to throw off neoliberalism. You know, when FDR said he didn't bring socialism to America, he said he saved capitalism. Yeah. And he told his rich friends that if you want to save most of your money, you have to give some of it away. Well, now we're back to the other thing where they don't want to give any of it away. They're now getting rid of the estate tax. They put all their money offshore. Half wage earners in America earn less than $30,000 a year. 1 in 5 kids in poverty. So in the richest country in the world. So, you know, the guy who runs the Amazon in Asia, I forget his name and I forget what they call it, but I saw him at a conference and he said, you know, the problem with America isn't that you guys don't have money. He says, it's just the way you spread it around. You don't spread it around.
You don't.
And he said, everybody's angry at the model of China. He says, but this is your model. You came up with this idea to send your jobs here and re-import the goods. This is your idea. And then that money doesn't go to workers. It goes to the guys who own the company. So that's the real problem. We need an economic revolution in this country. People don't realize that. And I think the Democrats will continue to lose until they wake up to that, which will be never.
Well, how do you explain that to people who may not get that? How do you get through to those voters in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, you know, with a message that says here's a candidate who is on your side, who's going to build factories?
Bernie beat Hillary in the primary in Michigan. So I think they did get that message. You know, half the country doesn't come out to vote anymore. That's another thing.
That's the other problem. It's always a certain percentage of eligible voters.
Right.
You know, now we're looking at midterms where Democrats are notorious for not coming out. I don't see any enthusiasm. I don't see any wave. Right now, we're fighting. It's Trump fights. So we're battling him, but I don't see what's happening on the other side. You know, honestly, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know who the answer is. You know, is it Bernie per se, him personally right now? I don't know. You know, I don't know. Again, you look at someone like Al Franken, who's been making his bones. Al Franken and Bernie Sanders, you know, is that going to be a ticket? I don't think the rest of the country is going to go for it for obvious reasons.
I think the country's, even Trump voters are on board for, you know, progressive politics these days. People are.
How do you convince?
Right now, the Democrats in Congress Trump proposed $55 billion more for defense.
Yes.
They bumped it up to $100 billion just like that. But somehow Bernie Sanders proposing free college, which is $65 billion, is a dream that we have to wait for forever for some reason. You know, they got Medicare for all in England in 1948, in 1960 something in Canada, and we're still waiting for it in the United. So I feel like in the, you know, Martin Luther King's letter in Birmingham jail, how long we have to wait to get what the rest of the goddamn world has, and it'll be forever if we let the corporate Democrats decide.
Yeah, but the thing is, somebody's got to sell this message to people who have been programmed not to hear it.
Right.
You know, when the ACA first started and you had those people, what they call themselves, the town hall protesters,
right,
and the media was covering that, you literally had fat people in wheelchairs wheeling up. They should have just called themselves the future diabetics of America. You know, they were wheeling up to these congressional town halls, essentially saying, don't make it easier for us to get healthy. Yes. But how was it covered? They were called a legitimate protest movement. They were called the town hall protesters.
Tea parties, they were called, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the birth of it?
Yeah, that was at the same time. Now, the thing is, how do you sell health to people who've been programmed to think that it's a Democratic plot? You know, you need to reprogram them first, and then, you know, make a common sense case. And I don't see anybody who's doing it.
Barack Obama could have. He could have.
He had the platform, but look how hard this guy had to fight just to get the ACA, just to get that far. Now, you know, you could make the case that if he had gone for single payer, maybe he would have been able to sell it with the clout that he had at the time. I don't know. Looking back, what I remember seeing was 60 House votes to repeal. You know, there's this thing, Trump has lately that for 7 years you've been saying repeal and replace? No, they haven't. For 7 years they've been saying repeal.
Right.
Period.
There's no replace.
No replace. They never had a plan. Their plan, as what's his name, Mo Brooks
Yes.
from Arkansas says when I see him occasionally, let's go back to the purity of the free market. If the free market was so pure, why did 20 million plus people sign up? Obviously, there's a need. The thing is, you've got to prove that to people who've been programmed not to hear it. And that goes with other things. During the campaign, he made a speech in Detroit, right? And he slipped in that thing about the estate tax. And this went on talking, which which Americans are very pissed off about because they pay too many taxes. I saw Lawrence O'Donnell stop him in his tracks when they finally cut away from this damn rally and said that is a lie. And frankly, he's the first one I saw use the word lie.
Lie, yes, I saw.
Because I was looking for it. Because I was home screaming at my television going, that's a fucking lie. The fact is, an individual can leave like $5.4 million to a kid or the heirs, and a couple can leave $11.868 million tax-free. So to say that you need to repeal the so-called death tax is ludicrous. It's counterfactual. But you have a country that's been programmed to hear, thanks to people like Frank Luntz, the death tax. And I've seen him on TV, and very smart guy, very clever. But you need to know that these are the kind of people you're fighting against. People who can change the Democratic Party to the Democrat Party and then smear everyone on that side, no matter what end of the party they're on. Someone who can sell the idea of the death tax and make it stick in people's heads. So again, I'm just looking forward. How do you fight? How do you get rid of this cancer starting now?
I think people are ready. I just wonder if the Democratic Party is going to cheat again and make sure the progressive doesn't win. People are really ready. We elected Barack Obama, a black guy with a Muslim name. People were ready for big changes. We didn't get it. The problem was, even when the Democrats controlled every branch of government, we still got a right-wing fucking healthcare plan anyway. Yeah. We got goddamn Romney Care. And instead of Barack Obama pushing for a public option even, instead of going to Joe Lieberman's state and saying, Joe, if you don't come pass this, I will make sure you get wiped out in the next election. Instead, he went to Dennis Kucinich's district and told Dennis Kucinich to roll over, and because he was sticking up for the public option. So this is the problem. The Democrats need to shake off their corporate donors, which they won't. So we're going to have a screwed up government for a while.
That's just reality. Money is in politics, and until they get rid of Citizens United, it's not going anywhere. But again, I go back to 2008. Hope and change was the message and the slogan. I remember what was happening. The economy was melting down.
Right.
You had Grandpa, who was running to be in charge of it, and his ditzy night nurse as his running mate. At one point, McCain tried... the state of our economy is strong. He tried the patriotic. He went patriotic because that's the usual first step to say, there's no problem here. Everything is fine. When he realized that line of bullshit wasn't going anywhere, he flipped to, I'm suspending my campaign and returning to Washington. Why? Because he was looking like a fool, even more of a fool than he looked like with that idiot as his running mate. But he was looking like somebody out of touch. So he ran back to Washington and also hoped that Obama would suspend his campaign to neutralize him in that moment. It was just another bullshit tactic. So I don't know if people were ready for hope and change as much as they were scared to death that the economy was melting down and Grandpa wasn't going to be able to fix it. So that was my fear at the time. So, how noble we got, I think they went for the smart guy, the guy who was composed, the guy who was intelligent and experienced. The dividend was we elected our first black president. But I think elections happen partially based on the moment, what's happening in the world at that time. And in 2018 and 2020, we don't know what's going to be happening. I wouldn't put it past this guy to play wag the dog. Start a war. No one's going to be talking about the economy. No one's going to be talking about healthcare. They're going to be talking about something else. He's got some speech tonight, I think, a statement on Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What, privatize it, send Blackwater in? What's the plan? I don't know what the plan is with this, 16-year war. At some point, you got to write it off going, I don't know what the political mission is. I don't know what the military mission is, but I don't see either of them. And at this point, I think you lost it.
So I just think I'd hate to be a pessimist. When I was reading your writing, we had the same emotional reaction to things, like screaming our head. I'm like, what the heck? And but I'm just kind of, I'm still trying, right? So I'm a part of a thing called Draft Bernie. There's this guy Nick Brana who started this thing. In fact, we're going to D.C. on the 8th, 9th, and 10th to help kick off, to try to get Bernie to run as an independent.
Mm-hmm.
And because we fear that the Democrats will do the same thing, super delegates, they'll rig the thing whole. So we're trying to get him to go third party, and but I just think that's how broken it is. I do not see the Democrats, even if they get back in power, things won't be better.
Do you see a danger of the circular firing squad just helping the other side? I mean, we've had that twice in both of those elections you cited. There was that, we had Nader and we had Jill Stein, neither of whom helped. That's my fear at this point.
I disagree. I think that if Trump didn't happen this time, he would have happened next time, which would have been worse. I think it's good that it happened this time because it had to happen. And the Democrats, you see, still aren't changing. So what happens when it happens again? What happens when Ted Cruz wins, a real maniacal son of a gun with an education? So I'm saying we dodged a bullet this time. The Democrats, I don't think people realize just how bad the Democrats are. And people give Barack Obama a big pass on a lot of things because he had such a horrible Republican Congress to work with. Yeah. And people give him a pass on that, but there's a million things he could have done without their help. He didn't do just like I said, the everything got worse. Even though he saved the economy. He saved the economy by quantitative easing with Wall Street, and he didn't do anything for homeowners. In fact, Timothy Geithner kicked 10 million people out of their houses, and that was part of their plan. So people know this, right? And that's why they wouldn't come out and vote for that stuff anymore. And people want to smash the establishment. People are desperate. Let me play you one more thing. Sure. Here's a gentleman we had on the show. His name is Nick Smith, and he works as a cook at a Waffle House in West Virginia. And here's what he had to say about Trump.
I know a lot of people that vote for him just because of that. I mean, if you were to ask anybody in Dickinson County 3-4 years ago, what do you think Donald Trump? And they'd say, well, he's a braying jackass Yankee who probably should have had his ass whooped a long time ago, to be blunt. But, really, he has said so many times, we'll bring back every coal job, 100% of coal jobs. That's what he said. And these people are desperate to believe in something.
So I think that people are desperate to believe in something, and Barack Obama gave them something to believe in. He was great at rhetoric. Hillary Clinton, horrible at rhetoric, and didn't give them anything to believe in. And people are desperate. And I don't think, people like you and me, oftentimes we don't realize how desperate it is for people, right? The fact, when I tell people that half all wage earners in America earn less than $30,000, they think I'm lying. When I tell them that half of the country is either poor or low income, they think I'm lying, and I go Google it. So, and this is in the rich. So I also ask people, let me ask you, Ian, you're a smart guy. What do you call a system that takes the richest country in the world and renders half of its inhabitants poor or in low income?
Capitalism with no conscience. And to me, I've made this point in another book, that we work in a capitalist system, but we live in a democratic society. And the point of these two entities is to counterbalance. When democracy is functioning properly, it's got to serve as a governor on capitalism run amok. And it will run amok because that's why Karl Marx wrote in the first place. So you need a governor on that. You need someone to fight for minimum wage and to make the point to people that this isn't a gift. I despise the word entitlements because, again, it's a very clever word.
Right.
People call Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid entitlements. Mm-hmm. And, again, this is something that Democrats have let Republicans get away with for a long time. The overtone of that word is we're giving you something to which you haven't earned, but you act as if you were entitled to it. When, frankly, it's just common sense that looks at human life and says people are going to work to a certain point and then they're going to retire. And when they retire, chances are when they're going to get sick. This just happens. And any government that doesn't account for that in terms of its budgets, in terms of its philosophy, not just its rhetoric, but what it does isn't functioning right. But that's what it ought to do. But again, another thing I didn't understand is I saw a stat somewhere that the mean income of Trump supporters was $72,000 a year. So I looked at that and said, something else is going on here. It wasn't just economic desperation.
Right.
What else was happening here? And I go back to the message that Trump was selling in the beginning, how he reached those people. language he used. You know that phrase he pulled out at the convention? What was it? These are the problems. I alone can fix it.
Yes.
I looked at that and going, that's an odd phrase for an inarticulate guy. Where is he pulling this, this kind of language? It's a very odd thing for him to say. And then I was reading The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. I read it to my son at bed so he'll, go to sleep happy. And I got to the part where Hitler got out of prison and was addressing his followers. What did he say? I alone lead the movement. So I'm figuring it wasn't just Melania who was cribbing on her convention speech. This guy was cribbing too. So you have to know what's in his head, what are the cards he's playing, but more than that, why did it work? It shouldn't have worked. If we're as decent as people say we are, American people are fundamentally decent people. Maybe so, but why did it work? I think that's what was going on for the last 8 years. I think Republicans have played that card consistently. I think that's part of what gave us this guy. So how do we go forward? Because I agree.
But I think the racism's always been there. Like we just talked about with the 40 years of the Southern strategy, it's always been there. So this isn't a new thing. And my whole thing is you got too many people staying home, not voting. And so how do you inspire those people to come out and vote for you? And so it's like we've always had the racist Republican. I mean, it's now they're more open about it because the president encourages them.
Emboldened them, legitimized it.
Right.
Said, I've got your back. I am your voice.
Right. But
he came out and said it.
No doubt. But we've always had the right-wing militias and, the Timothy McVeighs.
But they were the nut jobs. They were the extreme cases. Nobody took them seriously.
Right.
Now they're at a point where the president of the United States is legitimizing them and taking them seriously.
Right.
So how, maybe you can't reach those people. Maybe they're just gone. Okay? The question is, what percentage of the voting public are they? And what are the other percentages? And I don't know where the key is. Is it, do you break it down by state? Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Do you tailor your message for those people and where you went wrong the last time? Is it the messenger? Who's giving that message? Trump worked on, these were macro ideas, These were not brain surgeons. These were not economic experts. You looked at those rallies. It wasn't exactly the Davos summit,
I went to one. It was pretty horrible.
Yeah, these were not very swift people,
Right.
but these were very angry people.
Yes.
And if you get inside this guy's head, one thing he knows how to do is channel anger. Now, who knows what people are going to be angry about or scared of in 2 or 4 years. So again, I'm trying to look ahead, going, how do you fight this guy, with what people and with what tactics? Because I agree with you philosophically.
Yes.
100%.
Right.
My question, as you said, right now, and I'm not coming from a place of I know what to do, because I don't know what to do. It's questions, tactics. How do you beat this guy? How do you beat the Nazis? And that's all there is. Now, I'm not saying he's Hitler as such. To me, he's Hitler light. All the flavor, 10% less hate. But this is what we're dealing with. This is frightening that a person like this, and I lived through Nixon. I lived through those years, screamed my head off at George Bush when that was going on, when they lied us into a war. But I always said it was Cheney Bush. It wasn't Bush Cheney. This guy didn't have the wit to come up with the Iraq War.
Why do you think the Democrats don't scream more about the Electoral College? I mean, it's only thrown 40% of the elections in this century.
I don't know. I don't know if they think they can get there. That's obvious. That has to go. It's an antiquated system. 2 elections have been swung because of it. How do you get rid of it?
2 of the 4 elections in this century.
Yes. Yeah. So, and with enormous consequences. So how do you get rid of that system? What does it take? Constitutional amendment? And that's got to be passed by how many states? And how many of those states are red states? So it's tactics. How do you accomplish that? How do you make the case to people in those states? Now, at this point, how many state houses and how many governorships are in Republican hands? Most of them. Now you look back to gerrymandering. How do you fight that? I mean, this is a battle that's got to go on many fronts, from that level, from the micro level to the macro level, which is where Trump worked. He was in big themes. This guy couldn't tell you. He couldn't spell ACA. What he can say is Obamacare is a disaster. It's a disaster. It's death. It's death. It's dying. It's dead. He knows how to. That's all he does is repeat these words, because that's the limit of his understanding. Again, and this is tactics. To me, Hillary had him at 3 points. She had 3 debates. To me, these were heavyweight fights. There was no one else in the ring. He couldn't hide. She's smarter than he is, more experienced than he is. She could have cut him off at the knee. She could have beaten the crap out of him and made him look foolish, and there would have been nobody there to protect him. She didn't. She just sat back as if the American people were fundamentally decent and intelligent enough. She just went, see, do I have to say more? And my attitude was, yeah, you got to say a lot more. You got to take this guy down. So you see, again, most of what we're having is a violent agreement. Your fear with the Democrats is that they're too corrupt. My fear with the Democrats is that they're too inept.
Well, they're inept because they're corrupt, because they're only inept because they're chosen that way. The only reason they can't do the things that we want them to do is because their donors won't allow them. Why do you think they're not for Medicaid for all? They all love it. John Podesta bragged about, I made it to Medicare in the WikiLeaks email. So everyone knows how great it is, but they won't even say it because their donors won't let them.
Then they've got to find the courage to say it. But you've got to sell it. You need to sell that idea to a large part of the country that's been programmed to hear that, like Ronald Reagan did way back when in that recording, as socialism.
Yes.
You need to sell big ideas to people, and it needs to start with people who call this guy out as things he says are just lies, but you need to tell them he conned you.
Yes.
He went public after, and if you remember this, right after he won, he went down south. I think it was to New Orleans. Right, had another rally.
He had another. I thought it was in Florida, but I could be wrong.
I forget where it was. But what he said was, when they came up with that swamp idea, I didn't know if you'd go for it. But, I tried it out a few times, and it worked. I was surprised as anybody else. And, I can say that now because, frankly, I don't need your votes. How?
He said that?
He said it. How clear, how blatant, how blunt, how shameless does a con man have to be before people wake up and say, maybe he made us feel better for a minute, but I think he was out for himself. Again, in terms of the difference between the parties, the worst thing you can call a Democrat is inconsistent in their position, or horror of horrors, a hypocrite. The worst thing you can call a Republican is out of power. And these people will do or say anything, and they've proven it time and time again. They'll do anything to stay in power, including the Faustian bargain they made with this guy. Now they're trying to figure out, they just got their fingers in the wind, thinking, which way is this going to go, and can we play it? And when it reaches the point, which I'm guessing as it gets closer to 2018, because they must be doing internal polling, that tells them, he's officially becoming a political liability, then maybe they'll change. I have no faith, belief, confidence in any of these people getting a real conscience, but they may get what they'll call a political conscience, hence Jeff Flake's book.
Yes.
This is what, to me, this is the enemy. How do you fight that enemy, with what message and with what people?
But we have to make sure that we don't get in bed with the Jeff Flakes to, you know what I mean?
To legitimize them.
Yes.
Well, I don't see anybody, he'll go on and he'll probably do a little bit of a book tour and go, I was horrified, horrified. And he said, well, like I said, your horror's on a bit of a time delay. Yes. Where were you then? You know why? Because they were cynical enough at that point to just go, this is working. People are liking this stuff. Let's just leave it alone, see where we get. It was a way of cutting into Obama's popularity and setting the table for the election we just had.
So I know we have to wrap this up. Thank you for being generous with your time. I appreciate you coming in here.
This is fun.
We're talking with Ian Gurvitz, the author of Freakout Nation. He also wrote Welcome to Dumbfuckistan, which I'm sure everybody wants to read. I do. So I just want to impress the, because you're a very influential guy,
Not at all.
And I just make the
big influence in my house.
And make the case that it's right. We need to focus on Donald Trump to make sure we keep him in check or whatever we need to do with him. But I think that the real problem is we need to have something to replace him with. And if we try to replace him with more corporatism and neoliberalism, we'll get right back into that same place. Here's Dylan Ratigan. Now, I love Dylan Ratigan. He told the truth about the bank, so he has to he's not allowed on news TV anymore. He has to do his reports from a dentist office. So here is Dylan Ratigan, and here's what he says. And I think we need to keep this in mind.
The Democrats. The Democrats want you to believe that their party is, of course, wonderful and fabulous and wants to help to save the world and all the rest of this. And they want you to believe that the only problem with the American political system is the Republicans, and more importantly, the corruption of the American political system and the Republicans by the Russians. This, of course, would be the most horrible thing that could come from the current political situation. Because if we allow the Democratic Party to convince anybody, ridiculous they've even convinced themselves, that the primary issue with the American political process is Donald Trump and the Republicans, that validates their capacity to sustain themselves in a disgusting and corrupt fashion. The reality is, the only reason we have Donald Trump as our president and these horrendous Republicans is because of the unadulterated failure and corruption in the Democratic Party. Think about how bad, how unappealing, how offensive Barack Obama and ultimately Hillary Clinton had to be to the American population in order for them to even remotely begin to choose someone like Donald Trump as a better alternative. Think about how bad people have to view the level of corruption in the Democratic Party to think of Donald Trump as a remotely preferable alternative. Donald Trump is terrible. The Republicans are offensive beyond comprehension. But the solution is not the Democrats. The solution is a final terminal bypass of these two utterly corrupt political parties. And the Democrats are desperately fighting to try to convince you and everybody else that the only problem is the Republicans and Trump, and that they are quite actually perfect in their own way, when they are the ones who are the biggest contributors to the Trump campaign and the Trump problem.
So I agree with him, and I just try to impress upon people that we really need to have something to replace him with. And if we place him with more corporatism, we'll be in for a bigger shitstorm.
You know, look, this elections occasionally are blowbacks based on what's been happening. So it's very possible that what happens next time in 2020 will be a blowback to this guy. So in that political climate, I think it's possible you could run someone like Senator Sanders.
Or somebody like, I mean, I would... So, you know, even somebody like a Tulsi Gabbard or somebody like a Keith Ellison.
I like Keith Ellison. I listen to his podcast. Very smart guy. It's not just a matter, to me, it's not just philosophy, you know, as down and dirty as it sounds. It's personality. It's presentation. It's who they are. It's the message. It's how they sell the message. Do they resonate? Does that message resonate with people? Does the person resonate? Are they the right messenger for that message? And these things take place in time. We don't know what the world is going to be at that point, you know. So I think, to me, it's a matter of looking forward and strategizing now, not just for midterms, but for 2020. Again, I don't know the road. I just know it's not clear.
I would like to see the Democrats go back to being New Deal Democrats, not Better Deal Democrats. So New Deal Democrats is you put money in the pockets of working men, and that's how you stimulate demand side economics. It's not supply side economics, right?
No, that fails every time.
Right, and so FDR knew that, and so he gave penniless pensioners a pension. He gave penniless retirees a pension, right? He gave broke workers a job and put money in their pocket. And he helped out the farmers, everybody he helped out, and they elected him president until he died. And then after he died, they had to pass a law that restricted how much you could love a president.
Right, but again, at that time when he came in, the country was in a depression.
Yeah.
You know, so you wanted somebody who was going to come forward with that message. Where will we be? You know, you can make the case, and I've seen Robert Reich do this a lot of times, income inequality, you know, how that has changed, how it's gotten worse over the years. How do you make that case to people? See, I'm not sure, and again, when I say it, I really am not sure how you reach people who voted for a racist for president.
Well, I don't think you need to
How do you reach those people?
I don't think so. You don't try to reach the people who voted because of racist reasons. But there's lots of people who A, didn't vote, and B, who voted for him just because they wanted to smash the establishment. I think you can reach those people, but you're never going to reach the racists. No, you're not.
Yeah, no, I'm saying you won't change them. But
Right.
How do you reach people who, even those who put aside the guy who was just so fundamentally indecent, so
Right.
self-evidently dumb,
Yes.
you know, a fucking moron.
Yes.
How do you reach people who pull the lever for this guy? You know, I understand Hillary has her baggage, not a scintillating candidate. You know, what they didn't have on that ticket was any leg tingle. And Trump, you know, for all his faults, they had that. You know, there was a lot of excitement. He had, I hate to even soil the word charisma, but there's something there that this guy has that reached those people. And that was just true. It happened. I think part of the challenges now is figuring out what that was. Who are the people he reached? Who are the people you need to reach? How do you reach them? With what message? At what time and place? And via whom? You know, so it's a complex problem.
I think it's me. I'm very simple. I'm a simpleton. So I think it's got a simple answer, and that is Bernie Sanders style populism, which is Medicare for all, free college, infrastructure, and the wars. Although he's not too big on ending the wars. I would like him to be stronger on ending the wars.
I would have, again, during the campaign, two things I wanted to hear from him that I kept straining to hear. Foreign policy,
yeah,
because the world's not going away.
I know.
No matter how nice we'd like to make it here, it's not going to go away. Another 9/11, the game changes. The other thing I didn't hear details on is how do you get the taxes that you want to fund these programs through a Congress that fought the previous president tooth and nail? How do you do it? I know he knows how to work that place, but obviously these people have an appetite for obstruction. Mitch McConnell's no fool. You know,
right.
He screwed up the last time only on a fluke. You know, and I wouldn't count them out yet, by the way. Everybody, you know, the Democrats are saying, oh, we're on to taxes now, and this is dead. Who knows? Who knows who's reachable and when and how? I would never put anything past this big guy because I think it's dangerous to do that.
Definitely.
You know, so again,
Well,
Democrats, they need to get on their game, figure out what their game is.
Fingers crossed. I wouldn't mind seeing Bernie start a third party. That was actually my preference because, you know, I have a lot of crazy theories. One of them is that if everybody who agreed with the Green New Deal voted for it, she would have got at least 10 or 15% of the vote, and that would have changed the Democratic. So don't you think it's weird that the Democratic Party doesn't come after the progressive or the environmentalist vote? They instead wag their finger at them. And, like, you know, I have a joke in the show. We say, you know, if you blame Susan Sarandon for Trump, they also lost state houses and governorships. Who do you blame for that? Molly Ringwald? I mean, that's obviously there's something wrong with the Democratic's message.
Yeah, and there's something right as far as their own base is concerned with the Republican message because those red states are staying pretty red. You know, 59 almost 60 million Americans voted for McCain-Palin.
Boy.
63 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. What is that phenomenon, and how do you counteract it? That's what I look at. Well,
all right. That's where Freakout Nation. Check it out. Also, check out Welcome to Dumbfuckistan. That's also, there it is. It's in paperback. We'll put a link underneath. Ian Gurvitz, thank you so much for being our guest.
I'll be doing a book signing October 1st.
October 1st, where?
Book Soup at 4 o'clock
Book Soup.
on Sunset.
Okay, 4 o'clock on Sunset. All right.
If anybody likes to scream, just come out and we'll have some fun.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'd look forward to that talk. All right, buddy. Thank you very much. Nice meeting you.
My pleasure. You too. Thanks.
Okay. Hey, everybody, we have 2 live Jimmy Dore shows in September. September 25th, we're in San Diego, and September 18th in Burbank, California. Get your tickets right there. There's a link right there.